JJ the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. The biggest question going on right now, at least the evening of March 4th, 2021, is if you got PPP1 and PPP2 already, how are you able to take advantage of the new rules that have been put into play effective March 1st, which is for Schedule C filers being able to get PPP based on the gross income? Well, as of right now, it doesn't seem there's a specific procedure related to that. But I have good news as it relates to what the SBA has provided related to those that were or are farmers and ranchers that got this special calculation in the new Appropriations Act that went into play at the end of 2020. So with those that file Schedule F, farmers and ranchers that already received PPP in 2020, meaning they got it the first go around, the law then allowed those that filed Schedule F, farmers and ranchers, to get PPP based on their gross income, line 9. Now we have the exact circumstances that applies to the Schedule C filer, and it is then based on line 7, which is gross income. So what we're knowing is that based on those that have maybe taken a seminar by the SBA, Dax, thanks for passing on some information. Those that have read very astutely the interim final rules, Gene, thank you for following up on that, are noting that the new rules are not retroactive. Well, all this stuff is very technical, and what I'm telling you right now is that the SBA has already provided a procedure for those that filed Schedule F that are then going back retroactively, if I'm using that word now loosely, and getting PPP based on the gross income. Now, what am I talking about? Well, let's just go ahead and I'm going to flip over to show you and share my screen with you. And I'm going to provide a link to everything that I have provided and going to talk about. But there's a procedure notice. It came out January 13th of 2021, so very recent. It's talking about loan increases after the enactment date of the Economic Aid Act. That's the one that came out at the end of December 2020. And if we go down to page 3, we see for farmers and ranchers here that the calculation of the max loan has been changed. So it says if an eligible farmer or rancher received a first draw loan and the SBA has not remitted forgiveness payment to the lender on that loan, such farmer or rancher would be eligible for the higher maximum loan based on the formula described in that subsection, which is the gross income, line 9 for the Schedule F. It indicated that the lender of record must electronically submit a request to increase the first draw PPP loan amount. It even says even if the loan had been fully dispersed and even if the lender's first report on the PPP loan has already been submitted, meaning that loan would have already been done. Now, the amount of increase may not exceed, and it goes through the limits that we have on PPP1, which is the 10 million, which for a Schedule C filer or a Schedule F filer would never even be able to reach that. But with that, it says any request for an increase must be submitted electronically by the lender on or before March 31st, subject to the availability of funds. So what I'm expecting is that we will see an increase. We will see an update to this procedural notice. This procedural notice gets updated every time there's been something that needs to update it. So I would expect that probably on the 5th or the 6th, 7th, or 8th that we're going to see an update to this that is then going to allow for those that are eligible to get more under the new rules on how you go about it. Now, I talked with a banker today, one of my best friends, and he indicated that as of today, March 4th, the portal, the SBA portal that the banks go through just simply don't yet have the ability to go in and do anything related to the Schedule C in terms of the now new calculation. I do want to point out to you that the best source of information for you, and I'm going to show you one other thing here, but the best source of information for you, better than anything, is directly on the SBA website. And as you can see up here, sba.gov/PPP. So when we go to that, basically what's laid out here is everything related to PPP. I want to show you something that when we click on First Draw PPP loans, this is something that has been there since this has come out, since the new law that went into play. And what we see here is reapplying and loan increases. Existing PP borrowers that did not receive forgiveness can reapply if they previously returned some of or all of their PPP first draw loan funds, or keyword or there. Under certain circumstances, request to modify their first draw PPP loan amount if they previously did not accept the full amount for which they are eligible. And I understand, read that, and if that's all we had to go on, you may think, well, but that would only be for somebody that got an amount and didn't take it all. However, I'm just making clear to you, there's a reapply and a loan increase. Now, the SBA is going to come out and provide some additional information. What I also want to show to you, and I'm going to give you the link to it as well, is that on I guess it was yesterday the 3rd, the SBA also came out with what's called an interim final rule. Now, when we look at this and we look at page 7, so I'm going to go down to page 7, you'll note that a borrower whose PPP loan has already been approved as of the effective date of this rule cannot increase the PPP loan amount based on the new calculation methodology. And when you read through and you read other things about this, this indicates that the new calculation is not retroactive. So let's really break this down. So I've given you all the information that we have at this time from the SBA. I'm going to give you links to that. Here's the breakdown on this. If we're now looking at this very technical, this new calculation is not retroactive, meaning that if you got the first draw, you don't now get to rely on this calculation. Why would that be key? Well, it's key as it relates to forgiveness. So if you got the first draw and you just go with that and you don't do anything, your forgiveness is based on the old rules, meaning this calculation is not retroactive related to forgiveness. And therefore also it's not retroactive as in, oh, now you're just going to get more money. What you have to do is reapply. How do we know that this is the case? Well, you have to reapply when you are a Schedule F filer. You will need to reapply if you're a Schedule C filer. And when you reapply, you will be then able to use the gross income. So I had indicated and have indicated that we've always been able to reapply. And if you look at the procedural notice that I'm giving you a link to, this entire document is about how you reapply. And regardless if you're a farmer or rancher, there's other provisions related to seasonal employees and partnerships. The entire procedural notice is to address those that got PPP before a rule changed and therefore didn't get as much as they could. Partners, partnerships, seasonal employees, and Schedule F filers had evolving changes in how or how much PPP they could get. So this procedural notice that's in 2021 is how does someone go about reapplying? So yes, the calculation is not retroactive. Yes, I wouldn't dispute that in this IFR, a borrower whose PPP loan has already been approved as of the effective date of the rule cannot increase its PPP loan amount based on the new calculation methodology. You know, the SBA is doing the best they can. There's a lot of moving parts, lots of new information. I'm sure it was very much a last-minute change from the White House, meaning I'm sure that they were thinking about it, kicking it around, and then it was, well, we got to do this, and the SBA had little time to react. They're putting out information. So when you read that, we really could conclude that those of you that already got PPP-1 or PPP-2 are not able to get the increase, just the way that it says it right here in this IFR. I don't read it that way, and I'm not trying to give you false hope, because at the end of the day, I'm not the decider. The SBA is. But all I'm putting out there is that we've always been able to reapply for the loan. And again, that entire procedure here that I'm giving you a link to, let's see, right here, that entire procedure is how you reapply. So I think when we have heard either in a SBA seminar or what we've read is not false, that the calculation is not retroactive, meaning if you got the loan was based on the rules at the time, but you are able to reapply, meaning already are able to reapply. You're already able to reapply. And when you look at the first interim final rules that came out after the new law, this was back in January, it also talks at length on how somebody can just reapply in essence if they simply calculated, not by a math error, but they simply didn't include all the expenses that they could have because they either didn't know or they were confused by it or whatever the case is. So the new law really did open up the ability for those that got first draw to go back and get more under a number of circumstances. And in part was to address the fact that there was so much panic and misinformation or misunderstanding and rapid changes going on at the very beginning of PPP back in 2020. So yes, I get it. When we look at the PPP new applications for Draw 1 and Draw 2, it doesn't say, well, check this box if you're reapplying. It doesn't have a spot where it indicates to list, here's what you got previously, here's what you now qualify for, therefore here's your new loan amount. And I think part of that is that it is a reapplication process, meaning you are completing a new application, you're giving it to the lender that you worked with previously, you're doing it on the first draw, and it's then a reapplication. And therefore the SBA is obviously going to know what you already received. The reapplication now shows an amount that you do qualify. Of course, they're going to then subtract what you've already been given, and then you would be getting the difference. When I talk to the bankers here, that is their understanding as well, because that is already how it works if somebody's reapplying. Now, I understand the IFR, when we look right here, that just came out, does state on page 7 what I just showed you. Okay, I get that. It's saying that PPP loan has already been approved as of effective date, cannot increase the PPP loan amount based on the new calculation methodology. That would be true because the person has to reapply. It's okay if you don't believe me, because I don't have any authority. What I would encourage you to do is not just now go, well, I don't believe you, and so I'm not going to do anything about it. What I would encourage you to do is keep an eye on this, follow up with your bank. Your bank may not have the information right off the bat. Banks have to have a little bit of time to get caught up, follow up, understand it. So there's no reason to throw your hands up. I know that there's a minor human tendency to immediately go to the negative thinking, or to immediately go to, well, I guess we can't, and to be upset and frustrated, and you rightfully would be, especially if it is ultimately that you're locked out just simply because you already got your PPP. All I'm trying to communicate to you is that we already have a process of reapplication. I think it would be the similar, or a parallel for you would be if you went and applied for a loan to buy a house, and then the government said, oh, well, we now allow loans to be calculated this way because if you don't know, there are certain rules to determine how much of a loan you can qualify for. And it takes into account your income. And I'm talking about now for a house for 1 minute. When you go to borrow money, they don't just get to shake hands and smooze your banker. You know that, right? There's rules. How much income, prove it. Then they have to take a percentage and then only allow that percentage of your income to be then used for debt and etc. There's rules and regulations. So if you go and you get a home loan and they follow the rules at that time, and then they change the rules and they change the formula in determining how much of a loan you get, it's not retroactive, as in you don't just automatically get the new calculation applied to your loan. You have to go and reapply. Part of the reapplication process is ensuring you still qualify, right? Is your business going on? Do you need the funds? Do you have economic uncertainty? All the other provisions, when we look at the PPP application, what you have to look at is, do you still meet all of these qualifications? So you're reapplying, right? So you're filling out all this information, you're filling out a brand new application. If you were reapplying for a home loan, you wouldn't just say, well, go ahead and recalculate it. You'd have to fill out a whole new application and reapply. And so when you look at this, you have to, they have to make sure you still meet all the qualifications of question 1 through 9. And more notably, you have to make sure that you still meet all of these that you're going to sign off on. And one thing most notably here is that if you have a Schedule C and your gross income is over $150,000, you are not automatically considered to be somebody that has economic uncertainty. And that is covered in this IFR. I'm going to do another video on it, but down here it talks about this $150,000, not quite really a rule, but $150,000 consideration. So when you then go and you are looking to reapply, you have to meet all the other conditions. That is why it is true when it is said, or when you hear, well, this isn't retroactive. It's not. You have to reapply. So I'm confident. I don't need to convince you, really. It's going to be you that'll have to just go through the process. But I'm confident that the same thing that's already allowed for Schedule F filers that can reapply based on gross will be expanded and clarified, that there'll be the same reapplication process for the Schedule F filer. So time will tell. This isn't a video about right or wrong. It's a video of here's what you need to be prepared to do. So if for whatever reason it comes out that you're completely locked out, meaning you don't even have an opportunity to reapply, meaning under this provision for Schedule C filers, you're not going to get it. There's no way for you to get it. Then I will take this video down, so you wouldn't even be able to watch this. So if you see this video, then go to SBA.gov PPP and get the links, the ones that I'm providing to you. If any of them update, I'll give those to you. If I have an updated video specific to this, as in, okay, now here's how you go about reapplying, which is already told to us. You just reapply. You fill out a new application and you reapply with the same lender. You have to meet all the qualifications. So for me, I think the last thing is that when we look at the SBA website, back to the first draw and the second draw. So remember I showed you here in the first draw, and you go down and you have the first draw, and then we have this section on reapplying and loan increases. Well, if I go into the second draw, what you'll note is that there is not a section about reapplying. So we do know we're not going to be able to reapply for the second, but you will be able to, and have always been able to, reapply for the first. So I wish I could tell you to, hope for the best kind of thing. No, we should just expect the best. Now, if you're still concerned about this, I respect it. Get a hold of your senator or your congressperson or somebody that has any kind of an influence, and let them know if you're thinking this is going in a direction that you're locked out or Schedule C filers are locked out. Then take some action and let them know that you think this has been put together where you're locked out. And then that kind of political, for lack of a word, pressure or making your impression known helps, right? The SBA is doing the best that they can, and it is good for them to then be aware. And typically that can start with your senator or your congressperson. But one of the things I want to show you is that when we go to the IFR that was put together, that I'm giving you a link to, this interim final rule. So I'm going to where it was, that it indicates here that says the SBA is aware of a significant concern with this definition because it does not take into account fixed and other business expenses that small businesses must cover to stay in operation and therefore keep the owner employed. So it's saying that previously basing it on the net income was not taking into account a small business owner that's filing a Schedule C having other expenses that needed to be covered. It says, thus, in support of unemployment for sole proprietors, it says this change could affect many sole proprietors who have been effectively excluded from PPP, especially those that with very little or negative profit, many have located in underserved communities. They said businesses that file Schedule C have a high concentration of ownerships by members of underserved groups. They did this analysis that firms with no employees are 70% owned by women and minorities. SBA has determined that changing the calculation for sole proprietors will reduce barriers to accessing the PPP and expanding the funding on the small business. Based on the statutory language, they're indicating that they have the authority to take it from net and change it to the gross. And what it really seems clear to me, though, is that this would not be something then to lock out who they have just indicated has been the least benefited. So when this says right here, a borrower whose loan has been approved cannot increase the PPP loan amount based on a new calculation methodology, I think that really comes down to because they need to reapply. Now, I wish that they would have been a little more clear there. So hopefully the SBA procedural notice will come out quickly and soon. The banker that I talked with early this evening is expecting that probably to be here tomorrow, Friday the 5th, or maybe Monday. They're being told the portal will be updated. When you read other things from the SBA, they have indicated that they're expecting a major influx of PPP applications and that they are ready to serve everybody before PPP ends March 31st. And they have increased their efforts, if you will, to work in the 14-day period that the White House has allocated for those that have less than 20 employees, including the sole proprietor, filing Schedule C through 5 p.m. on March 9th. All that means is that that's who the SBA will only process applications on. Everybody still has the ability to apply and reapply for PPP on or before March 31st. All right, well, hopefully this helps. Again, if you're watching this video, that means that either Hope's still alive or the SBA hasn't come out with something, or if the SBA has come out with something, then go to the links in the body of this email, this video, which will be to the SBA website. You'll be able to find it on your own. If there is something that I'm able to now share with you on how to reapply, I'll give you another video on that if there's been any updates to that. But know this, we've always been able to reapply. We've always been able to reapply. We are going to be able to reapply Schedule C filers. And when you reapply, assuming you meet all the conditions of the first draw or the requirements, then you should be able to get the difference. All right, hey, that's a lot of stuff to go through, right? Technical. So hang in there. I mean, this is probably stuff that you've not had to deal with before. Why? Well, we've never been in these circumstances. So hang in there. Stay positive. The relief is here for you. We just have to somehow get maybe a little more clarification from the SBA to maybe make more people feel comfortable. I don't know if the SBA really has to give us any more clarification other than an updated procedural notice to just include Schedule C, because we've always been able to reapply, and there's no reason we shouldn't be able to reapply now. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you'd subscribe, and then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. Have a great one.